Building a product is so cheap these days that, if you have a little bit of funding, a little bit of money on the side, you don't even need to take all those millions that are available to you, and you can have that freedom of building your business independently and the way you like.
Welcome to Two-Sided, the Marketplace podcast, brought to you by ShareTribe.
Hi, I'm Stuart, CMO at ShareTribe, and I am your host. Today, or this episode, I am joined by Emmanuel Nataf from Reedsy, which is a marketplace for book self-publishing services such as editors, designers, marketers. A very cool story and a very cool niche, in my opinion. I like to read, and we also self-published our own book, The Lean Marketplace, and I could have definitely used some centralized help there. By the way, you can check out our book at theleanmarketplace.com. It's a great book if you're building a marketplace, if I say so myself, and you can use it, without having to ever use ShareTribe. Although, of course, we recommend that. Again, this episode was recorded in August 2021, and so if there are dates or other time-based references, they might be a bit outdated. I don't think there are in this case, actually, but I'm just putting this in just in case. We cover some really useful topics for many of you: how Reedsy got started without any experience in their industry, how they found out content and SEO to be their best channel, how they doubled down on those with some really cool tactics, I think. Like, they really figured out what does their audience need and then build tools for that. And related to that, how they have built a community and what they offer the community and what Reedsy gets out of the community. And what I personally think was super interesting was Emmanuel's answer to my very last question about what advice he would have for beginning marketplace entrepreneurs. Emmanuel shares there actually how they turned down a Series A round and then continues to share some really interesting, refreshing perspectives on funding your company, which really resonated with me and how we do things at ShareTribe. So, don't quit this one halfway, I'd say. Having said that, let's get going. I hope you enjoyed this one. As always, if you have any feedback, you can tweet at us at ShareTribe and I'll read it and reply. Or you can email me directly at stuart@sharetribe.com. That is SJOERD@sharetribe.com. All right, please enjoy my conversation with Emmanuel Nataf from Reedsy. Hey, Emmanuel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for agreeing to come on. I really liked Reedsy's idea. But before we really, transport into all the marketplace specific for Reedsy, can you tell us a little bit about who is Emmanuel and what did you do before you started Reedsy?
Yeah, so before I started Reedsy, I was actually at school. I was terribly bored in a business school, basically extremely interested in startups and tech and kind of like trying to develop different ideas. And then, as soon as I had something that felt interesting, actually, we went to see investors, left school. And so essentially Reedsy is pretty much the only thing I've really done from a business perspective, from a work perspective. So in a way, like I didn't have much of a background, which didn't help, with credibility in the beginning. But, sometimes you just find out about an industry, you dig in and you have ideas. And that's enough.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Obviously, yeah. So it was you and 3 other people, correct?
Yeah, we're 4 co-founders. There's 3 French dudes and 1 Brit. So when we started the company, we initially moved all together basically to London, where our first investors were based. And slowly as we developed, the company became fully remote. So now we're a fully distributed company. We're about 40 people based a bit everywhere.
Yeah. And so you were in business school, and the other 3, do any of them had already history with the publishing industry?
None of us. I think we were all quite interested in cultural, creative industries in general and in startups and tech, but none of us had experience with publishing. And actually, my co-founder Ricardo is the first one of us that's published a book. He published a book like a few months ago about how to market a book, basically.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, because maybe you can tell us a little bit about what is Reedsy in action, and then we would like to hear, I guess, how did you get the idea, especially because usually the story is that like, oh, I work in this industry and then I noticed a problem. So yeah, tell us a little bit about, first of all, what is Reedsy, just in a nutshell, and then if you can tell how did you come across the idea, that would be lovely.
Yeah, so very briefly, we basically help authors publish their book. So most authors we work with will look to self-publish their book, but we also help people who want to work with a publisher. We help them publish their manuscripts before they submit to agents and publishers. So
Mm-hmm.
the main product is a marketplace where you can find a curated community of professionals, who have experience working with some of the best publishers and on best-selling titles. So if you're looking for an editor, a designer, proofreader, illustrator, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
those professionals, those top professionals, will be available on Reedsy. So that was the initial idea. It came from learning about the space, basically getting a Kindle, realizing that the fact that distribution was changing so much
Yeah.
was going to impact the rest of the value chain. And just as a business model, the creativity, the freedom and the business model of self-publishing felt very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so quickly we thought about, okay, how can we support this industry so people can self-publish in a professional fashion, even though we help all types of authors. So yeah. And so
Okay.
as we developed, so we started with the marketplace, and as we developed, and I think we'll talk about it later, but we realized that most people were quite lost with the whole process of publishing a book. So we started
Uh-huh.
developing content, educational material, and tools. We have a whole set of tools that's available for people to learn about writing craft and slowly, get familiar with the whole journey, the whole publishing journey.
Yeah, let's leave that until a little bit later because I would like to. So, were you all roughly same age?
So three of us were still at university, two of us in business schools. Once our designer Matt was studying architecture actually, but it
Okay.
turned
Yeah.
out he could make buildings and design websites.
Yeah.
And our CTO Vincent had more experience building product. Is slightly older, but yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, because I'm really interested in like how did you get about like how did you build the very first product, for example? So because you're not
mhm,
from that industry, so you don't really have a often the idea gets sort of pre-validated over many years. So how did you validate the idea in a way, and what was the
mhm.
first version that you built?
Yeah. So, there's different ways of like, looking at a market. You can be like, the market doesn't know what it needs, but I'm pretty convinced in a very autistic fashion, that, this is what the market needs. And so you build
Mm-hmm.
it and you see what happens, or you can just like run surveys and like try to validate your idea for, in a very like, marketing driven way. And so we kind of went like more, the product way, like, we feel like there's a product that's missing that could help support this industry. Let's see whether that could work. So, but we did do a bunch of interviews. We did talk to a lot of people in the industry. We
Yeah,
were trying to get a sense of, whether we were onto something that was actually missing. And so initially a lot of people telling us, I'm not sure we really need this, or that company tried and they failed.
yeah,
And so obviously, in the beginning, there's a lot of stuff to verify before you can get some sort of like product market fit. But yeah, for us, that was more, it felt like it's needed. Let's try and see.
yeah. And so, what was the first? Did you build it from scratch? Like you mentioned, you had a CTO, so did he just code it from scratch, or did you use like WordPress or something?
Yeah, so CTO, I mean, he was a, I mean, he is a full stack developer, but he's more of
Mm-hmm.
a back end developer. So the first version of the site had like the whole front end, the whole CSS in a single file. It was kind of like a weird thing, but
Mm-hmm.
but it worked. It was enough to raise a bit of money and get a little bit of traction. And so, yeah, Matt and I started, Matt, who's our designer, started designing the product, started thinking about it. And the very first iteration of the product was basically the profiles of the professionals who would, at some point join the site. And
Yeah,
we used those profiles to basically showcase some really great professionals who were kind of like our early adopters and willing to kind of like, have a go at it and see what would happen. And so
yeah,
one of the first people we had on the site was one of Stephen King's designers. And so his work was truly amazing. And so a lot of surrealistic kind of like style work as well in his portfolio.
yeah,
And so we were using that profile over and over and over and over again to show the quality of like the professionals who were available on Reedsy.
yeah.
And so that allowed us to get our first customers basically. And so in the very beginning, we were only charging on one side of the marketplace. And then slowly, as we were able to provide more value, we started charging on the other.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So two things about that actually. Maybe the first one is like, how did you get even the first people on board, like from the professional side?
So we started with designers because like the visual aspect, it's easier to sell something when there's like something visually compelling.
Yeah.
And so we started looking for like, top designers who'd worked on best-selling books, very famous books. So really those profiles helped, get us running, a lot. And so we just reached out. And so, you reach out to 100 people and you're going to find like those early adopters who are just curious about it,
Hmm.
who might have had the idea actually for the product, but, did it, never developed it. So they're like, yeah, I thought about it. I thought that was needed. Okay, I'm happy to sign up and create a profile. And so,
Yeah. And so early on, so that's mostly designers, but from the very start, did you have multiple like categories of
yeah,
providers on there, or?
we had two categories. We had editing and design, which
Yeah.
remain our top services basically today. We provide a bunch of editorial services. So from editorial assessments, developmental editing, copy editing, proofreading, indexing, etc.
Yeah.
And for design, that was like cover design, book interior design, typography, and illustrations. And so, yeah, those services were like the initial services we started with. And then slowly afterwards, as we saw, a need, we added more.
Yeah, because of course I guess it's mostly digital, right? Because often I ask the question like, did you constrain it in any way? So basically we just established that you had two categories, which you kind of need for a book, right? Like someone's need to put the content in there, then you need someone to edit it, and then you need some nice wrap around it. And then basically that's the minimum thing you need for a book. But did you in any other way like constrain the marketplace? For example, on the other side, like how did you get the first customers on board? Like did you do that like country by country, for example?
Yeah, so we quickly realized that, so we're only doing it in English to begin with.
Yeah.
And we quickly realized that the US was going to be, for us, the largest market by far.
Hmm.
So there weren't too many constraints, English speaking people. That was it. Actually, we had one constraint because when we started Stripe, Stripe, the payment service provider that we use, was so the product is called Stripe Connect, which is a product to build marketplaces. The payment system for third parties was only available in a limited number of countries. So we did have some limitations because of Stripe. And initially, because Stripe was so new, a lot of people were pissed that we weren't using PayPal. But after a while, it started to work. Took a few years actually. We got complaints a lot of in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
beginning. Yeah,
Yeah, I remember like we have in our like in ShareDrop in our ShareDrop products we also use it, and I remember that it was initially like I think the English speaking countries and then several Western
yeah,
European countries, and it has scaled quite fast over
yeah.
the last couple of years. Yeah, and so actually, and coming back to that earlier point where you mentioned something about you were only charging one side of the marketplace. So actually, so which side were you charging?
We started with the supply side.
Okay.
Initially, so people providing services to authors. And then after 3 or 4 months, we added the demand side. We wanted to make sure we're providing enough value to both sides
Yeah.
before charging. But we charged from day one. We were never free or whatever.
Do you remember what was like the very first transaction, very first book?
The very first book. So I think it was an Australian editor that worked on a book about what was it, Vikings or something like that. Something kind of funny and random.
Yeah,
But yeah, so yeah, that was the
that
first
was it.
project,
Yeah.
and actually it was a much larger amount than we expected. Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, so earlier we established that you basically used, let's call it like direct sales to acquire the supply side. What were some of the first tactics or strategies you used to acquire the demand side?
So fairly early on, I think we basically did like I guess what most companies do, like when they're starting out or anyone looking to sell a product and find an audience, we listed a bunch of channels and a bunch of ideas that would potentially allow us to reach our target market. And fairly early on, I think we knew that content marketing was going to be something that would make sense for us. Though in the first, I guess, like in the first maybe couple of years, we were producing content that wasn't really like doing what we wanted.
Hmm.
We didn't really have a sense of like how SEO worked back I did SEO when I was at university, in the first few years, and like it was just so easy to trick Google and to rank for anything and make money out of it.
Yeah.
But over the years, like Google became like a lot smarter. So just you couldn't just produce any sort of content and get it to rank anymore. So the first couple of years, we were doing a bit of everything. I would say we were running some ads, we were like doing some content, we were doing some webinars, we were doing like in-person meetings and events,
Yeah.
which
Imagine that. Yeah.
back then that was crazy. And so and after 2-3 years, we started getting people on the team who were really really strong at content and SEO, and we've become like some sort of like a content machine in a way.
Yeah.
So we've become really really good at producing content. We're always trying to take content to the next level. Whenever we can actually even build a product, instead of just having a blog post, we'll do it basically. And so it took just like some learning, I would say. But yeah, we have an audience of authors, people who like to read and consume, written content. So for the most part, having a blog and producing content. We also have a YouTube channel that's grown really, really fast in the past few years, where we cover anything from, writing craft to, publishing, distribution, marketing, etc.
Yeah.
And so all those channels, all those content related channels have led to like, today there's, I would maybe like 2.5 million people coming to the site every month.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's pretty much, purely organically.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. When you say like, if we can turn it into a product, we will. Could you give an example? What do you mean with that?
Mm-hmm. So for instance, if you Google writing prompts, you will find like Reedsy as like the number one as the number one result.
Okay.
And initially, for quite a while, like, people were Googling, writing prompts, and we were giving them a list of prompts. And at some point, we decided to introduce some sort of contest, writing prompts contest. So every week now we have like a new series of prompts on a different topic every week.
Yeah.
And so people can submit a short story, and there's we've built actually an entire community out of it. Instead of just having a blog post or just like a directory that would list prompts, it's a whole community, and people can submit stories, and we even have judges reviewing them and finding like the winners every week. And so that's just an example, but we've done that for a bunch of keywords. So we've created a bunch of tools. We have like a book title generator, character name generator, anyway, a bunch of different generators
Yeah.
and a bunch of different directories that aren't just like basic blog posts.
No.
We sometimes we start with a basic blog post, and if we get, or even if we don't like get the traction that we look for, we try to develop something even more advanced, basically.
Yeah, no, that sounds cool. Yeah, I was gonna, because now while you were talking about this, I was thinking like, oh, there must be a heavy community around this. Like if you know about like writers and people like to share, and like people like there's many of these sort of creative like endeavors that automatically sort of generate community. Have you done so this was a great example of that. Have you done any other things to sort of, let's say, like seed the community, like improve it?
So we have like a whole like platform called Reedsy Learning. That's basically a series of online courses. Right now they're email courses, but there will be a new version of that product coming up in the coming months.
Okay.
And so basically you can take free courses that, over a period of 10 days, you get an email every day to cover, whatever it is that you might be doing, how to write a
Mm-hmm.
romance book, how to write sci-fi, how to write fantasy. We have a bunch of different courses, how to create a cookbook, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And
Yeah.
so it's just a different way of like, sharing our content with our audience, because some people want to read a blog post, some people want to, get an email in the morning while they're getting coffee and the croissant.
Yeah.
So there's like, we're giving people different ways of learning about the whole process, basically.
Yeah. That is cool. That is really cool.
So we also added a few other tools that I think are really worth mentioning. So we have a tool that we call the Reedsy Book Editor. The name might be a bit confusing, but it's basically a book production tool that has some of the collaborative features of a Google Docs, but allows you to export your book as a PDF or an EPUB that you need, the files that you basically need for distributing your book.
Yeah.
And so that tool is really amazing. It's a really elegant, really light, interface where you can just like, throw your thoughts, structure your story, and it will be adding more outlining features and in the coming month as well. So really great to throw your ideas until the point where you're ready, to download the files that you need for Amazon or, other retailers, basically.
Does it then straight come into the format that you need for Amazon, for example? Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah, it
Okay.
works with all online retailers for both physical and digital.
Wow, I should have known about this earlier. Like at ShareTribe, we also published a book I think 2 years ago, maybe longer actually. Time is a little bit of a vague concept ever since the pandemic, but called the Lean Marketplace, and we published it ourselves through Amazon. And actually, I was the main responsible for that project, and I remember that it was quite a headache, certain steps and formatting, etc.
Yeah.
So
Essentially, like that was a pain point for too many authors. Or like some people would spend quite a lot of money on editing their book, and then they wouldn't put any efforts into the formatting of it. And so it's not just the text, it's the whole thing that matters. And so it was kind of frustrating. So essentially the tool, you can throw anything at the tool, it will give you something that looks really great. So you don't have to learn InDesign, you don't have to learn about how to design a book, you don't have to think about it. We're removing that, don't think about it, just give it to it.
yeah,
That's it.
yeah. And I saw on the site that you have something like more than 2,000 editors right now, and thousands of other like professionals, like you mentioned earlier on. One thing that I've always like also learned through the podcast and talking to many marketplace entrepreneurs is like the importance of quality of the supply side, specifically of the service. So, how do you maintain the quality? How do you check it anyway before like at the beginning, and how do you maintain it?
Actually, it's something that didn't help us in the very beginning, but truly helped us in the long run. So initially, the first few people, who applied, there's people we talked about it, but we reached out to some really great professionals initially, and we found a few early adopters. But then, as we started to grow, more and more people applied, and a lot of people got rejected and got really pissed. And so you'd have really nasty comments on a bunch of different forums and everything. And so,
Okay.
when you're just starting, you're taking all that negative feedback and stuff. You're like, what the hell? But like we stuck with it, and we're like, it doesn't matter if those people are unhappy. Like we think we need this type of professionals with this level of experience, etc., to provide services with us. So it doesn't really matter if some people are angry or upset or whatever. We'll just stick with it. And so that's why, even though we've been running for 7 years, but there's only in a way 3,000 people providing services with us. It's because we only want the very best. And so for most services, we get like a lot of information about work experience and all the different books that people have worked on. And so we double check that they've actually worked on the books that they mention. We take a look at the books and their reviews. We look at the work experience. So we have like different things that allow us to vet. In some cases, for instance, for marketing, it's quite hard in this industry to find really talented book marketers or people who are really knowledgeable about this niche. And so we actually interview them. So the process varies a lot depending on the service.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned earlier when we said that, your very first transaction, you said it was more than you expected, which always like leads me to the question. And I think that's the fear, especially of early marketplace founders, like disintermediation. How do you make sure that the transaction actually happens online so you can get what you are owed?
So we might be an exception in the sense that even though we've grown and we attract quite a lot of people to the site every month, we still have that tight community of professionals providing services with us. And so a lot of them find a lot of really interesting projects through us. And so it's like a source of interesting projects that they don't really want to lose. So it's not in their interest to actually risk it. But apart from that, one thing you do is you build all the tools that might be needed to make the transaction, the whole process, the whole collaboration as smooth as possible. And so we're always developing more tools, basically, for our professionals, so they don't have to think too much about anything. Just one simple thing, but just the process of contracting. Creating a contract, getting it signed, all that stuff, it's a few clicks on Reedsy. And so it gives you some peace of mind, essentially, providing some sort of guarantees that, if things go wrong, there will be a party in the middle that will try to mediate and everything, and that will try to come to some sort of fair agreement. And so all that support, essentially, plus hopefully some quality projects leads to people, hopefully not disintermediating too much. It's always a risk. It's definitely always happening. But yeah, you try to limit it by just providing tools that are so good that people don't want to go anywhere else to do the thing.
No. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm not even sure. I mean, like I've talked to so many people about this. I'm not even sure whether you are the exception. I think this might also be one of these things that, especially like early marketplace founders, are just, what's the word, like disproportionately worried about. But like,
yeah, I mean, like human beings aren't all nice, and so, as soon as they can try and
sure.
save a bit of money, it doesn't matter too much to them whether, someone put a lot of effort into building a nice product and, is actually marketing it to find them customers. Some people really don't care about that. Some people are really like, they're bad.
No, of course. Like, of course.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't mean to say that it never happens, but I think it's maybe less of a problem than it really is. Like,
I'd say there's like a minimum like number of like tools that must be on the site, otherwise that will happen. There's like if you don't make contracting easy enough, like people will go elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, like maybe not even tools, right? Like it's more about like the value that you provide with it, right? Like basically, so that whatever is the transaction or the commission that you take somehow is in relation to the value that you're providing. And tools is a really great way of doing that, of course. And like you said, also, I think you mentioned something like some kind of, with the contracting, it's kind of like same as what Airbnb had when they started adding insurance, right? Like some kind of security, safety that you build in. So no, that makes a lot of sense. And of course, also, I don't know, how many people write a lot of books, but like the repeat usage is maybe a little bit lower than when with some other services, I can imagine.
Exactly. Definitely.
Yeah. And so let's move a little bit into the transaction part, just a couple of, or I don't know how many questions I'll have about that, but you mentioned initially you charged one side. From that, I sort of deduct that now you're charging both sides.
Yeah, we do something that's very similar to what most marketplaces do. Our fees basically are shared between both sides just because we think we provide a service to both. So that's why we think it makes sense. We take basically a 10% commission from both sides. So if an editor comes to you and says, I don't know, like to copy edit your book, it will be $1,000. The actual price to the client will be $1,100, and the payout to the freelancer will be $900.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. And do you have any other revenue models? Like we have so many tools, like do you charge a subscription for those, for example?
No, so on the marketplace, which is our main product, that's the only revenue we're getting out of it. We do have another product that we released like a couple of years ago, which we call Reedsy Discovery, which is a place for authors to get their book reviewed ahead of the launch. So to get some basically early reviews that they can use as like marketing material for Amazon and other retailers, their own site, etc. And so that one we charge only $50 per review, basically. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. No, I mean, I could imagine that there might be opportunity to also maybe start charging for the subscription. Like the more advanced these editing tools get, it's a trend that you see with some other marketplaces. It's sort of like a SaaS-enabled marketplace. I mean, I'm sure your users might not be happy about this suggestion, but like,
there's like the marketplace itself. We're definitely not going to add anything to it. I mean, at least for the foreseeable future, but I don't think that will change. Yeah, we have some additional tools we want to add to our book production tool that maybe we'll charge for, but I think overall that's a business model that's worked quite well for us, and there's no reason to do anything else. Yeah.
Speaking of the future, what's in store for the future of Reedsy?
Yeah, I mean, there's always more products we want to build and develop. The main product, the marketplace that we have today, so August 2021, is being fully redesigned, and the front end is being fully rebuilt. So, there's like still all the stuff that back in 2014 when we were kids, we thought, would be useful to people. And so we know precisely, which features are needed and, and what should be in the product now. So there's going to be a brand new interface, hopefully super intuitive, super fast. So we're fully rebuilding this. We, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, our learning platform is being redeveloped as well. So we want to take learning to the next level, basically, for a number of reasons. But we want just better quality books on the site. And also we're working on training more editors, because like as we've grown, we've been like, okay, this is really great, but there's not that many really talented editors available on the market, and same for
Yeah.
marketers and other verticals. And so we're working on basically, some sort of university to train everybody. So yeah,
Yeah.
so that's one of the things we're doing. And yeah, and there's a few other products. One really cool product that we'll be adding as well is, as I mentioned, as part of our book production tool, there will be some outlining features, which hopefully will be more intuitive than everything that's currently on the market. A
Hmm.
lot of authors use Scrivener and like other tools, you might have heard about it,
Yeah.
which we don't think are that great. So we've been like thinking about a bunch of different features for that. So hopefully there will be more educational and more tools to support authors basically on Reedsy in the coming months and years. Yeah.
Great. Hey, as a last question for this episode, is there anything you would have done differently, and or any tips you would have for starting marketplace founders? A lot of people listening to this will be like very early on. Any lesson you want to give them?
I don't know, like it really depends, like, where you're coming from. For us, like we thought we knew stuff, we didn't know that much. Like, as I said, we're straight fresh out of universities. So the market today is extremely different from the market when we started in 2014. You were raising a seed round of 500K, and that was already a very nice seed round.
Hmm.
Today you raise a few millions on an idea. So essentially, it's like a totally different environment and ecosystem. You don't have to take any money. We had to because we were just like, we didn't have much on the bank account.
No.
But building a product is so cheap these days that if you have a little bit of funding, a little bit of money on the side, you don't even need to take all those millions that are available to you, and you can have that
No.
freedom of building your business independently and the way you like. And so it's actually something that we've kind of changed over time. We thought we were going to go for one round and then the other and then the other and then the other.
Uh-huh.
And in a way, we were kind of lucky that we almost raised the Series A and then we turned down like the term sheets that we had because we were seeing some really strong growth, and we were like, okay, maybe there's a way to keep building this in a more independent fashion. And so I think, like starting a company, it's a little bit like, people go to school and they want to get to the next year and the next year and the next year and the next year. And so when you start a company, like the next step is the next funding round, like in
Yeah.
12 or 18 months.
Yeah.
And that's that model that's really like, present in everybody's, head, but that's all made up, like it just, there's just people who want to put money into your company, so you make them more money.
Yeah.
Also you make more money to Facebook and Google, but you don't have to do that, like
No.
maybe you can raise a bit of money in the beginning if you needed to kickstart the whole business, but for a bunch of industries, a bunch of niches, it's not needed.
Yeah.
So I would say it's not that I would do it differently, but it's something that we've realized over time that we didn't need all those millions to build something that impacts people in a very positive way and at scale. And yeah, I would say that's something that we learned.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that's a fantastic. I mean, I couldn't subscribe to that more. Like at ShareTrap, also we moved our company from an originally like more traditionally VC funded model to what is called a steward owned model, where basically only employees can have shares with voting rights. And we did a sort of crowd investment round, which we raised like 1.2 million, I believe. And then we bought out for a part the original investors. And now we're also like a self-funded company, full autonomy,
Yeah.
because we have a bigger mission than indeed like moving from round to round and then going for an exit and then, well,
Yeah.
whatever, like
Yeah.
abandoning ship. Yeah. And I agree that that's like the dominant model that you see in all the press, tech crunch, especially in the startup scene, as if that is the only method of financing. So I think that's a great lesson to bring out that there's more available.
And I think like it's my current battle, but like, when you see like the types of businesses that VCs fund, like actually like it depends on the VCs obviously, but a lot of VCs like truly put me off, like, these days, like all that money poured into like all those food delivery companies,
Yeah.
creating like I don't know, like developing laziness and like I think I read an article. What was it? Like a society of servants, basically. All those people, on the scooters, like
Yeah.
bringing you your food and stuff, like all that crap, all those billions. Like, do you really want to work with those people? I don't know. Does it
Yeah.
make sense? Does it work with your values? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, I think that's and I agree, that's something that you have so much to think about early on that that's not something you immediately realize. And especially if you come from outside, that seems to be the dominating model, like you said. And of course, it works for there are loads of industries or businesses where, it is required. Like if you do some big tech or deep tech, which just just need a lot of capital up front, then maybe that's the way. But it's not the only way. I totally agree. So let's end on that. Let's hope that reaches some ears in the future. Thanks a lot, Emmanuel. Thanks for your time, and all the best to Reedsy.
Thank you very much. I'll speak later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Two-Sided, the Marketplace podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, don't forget to subscribe. If you listen on iTunes, we'd also love for you to rate and give us a review. If you got inspired to build your own marketplace, go visit www.sharetribe.com. It's the fastest way to build a successful online marketplace business. Until next time.